Around. Thankfully, we're back at home for the first time in nearly a month after 3 consecutive road games. Yeah.
It is a month.
Is it exactly a month? I was like, I don't know, it's 3 weeks. How does this work out? Because again, like, time is escaping me. Like, what week is it? What day is it? Right before I started this, I was like, is it Thursday? Kind of feels like a Friday. And part of the reason for that also, Matt, is that the Colts slid the practice schedule to accommodate for that short week. So today was a bit of a modified walkthrough, an up-tempo walkthrough, if you will. But the biggest storyline this week so far, T.Y. Hilton back on the practice field. Go ahead and submit your questions there in the comments section. But what is realistic in terms of T.Y. coming back from that neck procedure? He's getting out on the practice field, but this is something you certainly cannot rush back from, although it's well documented, the Colts record in games without T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's 2-14 without T.Y. Hilton all time. Now, buy into that whatever you want, but that's the hard truth, 2-14 without T.Y. Hilton. And so I think realistically, Larra, I think it's, if he does in fact play coming up on Sunday, now theoretically based on the rules, that's possible, but the Colts have not made that designation just yet, activating him to the active roster from injured reserve. They've got 3 weeks technically from yesterday to do that, because that's when the move was made. But, if he comes back, I think it's fair to get him into an acclimation process, whether that's a pitch count or a niche role early on. But, this offense right now is humming. The last 2 games against Miami and Baltimore, they haven't had a hard time scoring points. They haven't had a hard time moving the football. Carson Wentz is playing the best football of his career. I'm sure we'll get, or certainly with the Colts, I'll put it that way. Well, I'm sure we'll get into that throughout the course of the discussion. But having T.Y. Hilton, if he does come back and play, man, what a boost to the offense that'll get, just in terms of, production and just psychological, to get one of the biggest leaders on the team back in the huddle. I think that'll go a long way, from a mental standpoint inside that huddle. But yeah, it's just exciting. And what irony it would be to have him come back and play the Texans of all teams.
So
he's just dominated the Texans over the course of his career. Over 1,700 yards against one team is certainly a remarkable feat. So exciting to have T.Y. Hilton back at practice this week, and we'll see what that means coming up on Sunday.
We will discuss and debate and banter on all of these topics for the next few minutes or so. So go ahead and drop all of your questions in there for Matt and myself. And notably, one of the things that I asked Darius Leonard in availability today was, although you have 5 weeks in the books already, you've only played 1 division game. You're going into a stretch now of 4 home games. 4 out of the next 5 will be at home. You host the Houston Texans this weekend, and then 2 weeks after that, you're going to host the Tennessee Titans. 2 weeks after that, you'll have, or shortly, week after, you'll have New York Jets, but then the Jacksonville Jaguars. So this is a critical stretch, this second quarter plus of the season. And he talked about, we can't let this thing spiral. This is the point where we've got to start to take command and win these divisional games. They always say those count twice. How critical of an opportunity is this for the Colts? You mentioned the offense is rolling. This is really the point that you need all 3 phases to come together when you do have this stretch of opportunities. You'll have the Houston Texans at home, go on the road to San Francisco, but then come back to host Tennessee to wrap up the rest of this month. It's
imperative. I think coming up on Sunday, the Colts have to treat this game against the Texans as if it's their Super Bowl, because quite frankly it is. The math says it's not a do-or-die situation, because there's still a lot of football left coming up after this game. 10 games left, or 7, or what we play 17 games. So I don't do math in public anymore. That's for darn sure. But at any rate, it's not as early as we'd like for it to be. 1-4 is 1-4 heading into week 6. And, like you said, Larra, this is only the second AFC South game of the season, and it looks as if this division is still going to be obtainable, considering there just aren't a lot of dominant teams. I still think it's a two-horse race, neck and neck, between the Colts and the Titans. Making that Tennessee game in a couple of weeks, obviously that's a must-win game. You got to get that. Quite frankly, I just don't think you can afford to lose too many AFC South games the rest of the season and still think you have a shot to make the playoffs, because the wild card inside the AFC is so stacked. There's so much parity inside the AFC conference. I still think the best chance for the Colts to make the playoffs is win the division. And so you've already kind of put yourself behind the 8 ball a little bit as far as that goes. You're 0-1, a head-to-head matchup. You lost that against Tennessee. And so you're looking at something that you have to get on a little bit of a roll here because, as you said, 4 of the next 5 are against teams that are under 500. You're playing some rookie quarterbacks the next couple of weeks, including this week against Davis Mills. But it also coincides with Tennessee's toughest part of their schedule, right? Week 6 through 10.
And they've had some injuries of late.
Yeah,
as well.
they're playing Buffalo, then Kansas City. I still think Kansas City can rebound and be the Chiefs, if you will. Then come here and play the Colts. That's a must-win game for Indianapolis. Then take on the Rams in Los Angeles, and then come home to play New Orleans. And so, hopefully in about 4 or 5 weeks, we're sitting here talking about a different tune of the season for the Colts. But right now, 1-4, playing a division game coming up on Sunday. You got to get this win. And quite frankly, you can't really worry about what's ahead of the Colts on paper. If you're a player or a coach, all you can worry about, sounds cliche, but just start stacking good performances on top of one another, and getting back in the playoff race will, quite frankly, just take care of itself. But you got to play a 60-minute game, and you got to find that killer instinct, because this team just hasn't found it so far through 5 games.
Working through a few questions pretty quickly here that we can get to, and then we'll delve into a few of the bigger topics. Also, Deb is asking, who's our kicker? It is still Rodrigo Blankenship. He had the MRI on Tuesday to see what the severity of this hip issue. He was feeling severe pain in his right hip in that Monday night game at Baltimore. So the Colts did due diligence in signing Michael Badgley to the practice squad. So should Rodrigo not be an option for Sunday, you do have Michael Badgley, who spent time with the Indianapolis Colts back in 2018 working under Adam Vinatieri. So he has familiarity within this locker room, within this coaching staff, with all of those things. So we will have to see when the injury report comes out tomorrow after practice exactly what that outlook would be for Rodrigo Blankenship. But to this point, there's no reason to think that it's 100% he would not kick yet. It's just too soon to tell.
Yeah, as you said, the Colts brought in a handful of guys this week to work out kickers, and they have signed Badgley to their practice squad. Was here under Adam Vinatieri in 2018 in training camp, and had a nice preseason that year as well. He's kicked with the Chargers. He's about a 78% field goal kicker for his career since 2018. Got beat out, though, this past season, and so was a free agent. And then the Titans were in a little bit of a pinch to start the season, so they signed him for a week. So he has played in 2021, albeit just 1 game. But it's one of those things where, unfortunately, Larra, it's just a fluke deal where your kicker gets hurt in pregame warmups, and you're just looking back to a game where you let a 19-point lead slip away, and then you do the coulda, woulda, shoulda game, and you point to all 3 phases. And obviously in the kicking game, special teams, you left 7 points on the field, and you had 3 missed kicks. If just one of those kicks goes through the uprights, the Colts win in regulation.
Looking to a few questions, you brought up the defense and a number of these questions in regards to the secondary in particular. So I'm just going to kind of put all of these together, since they're all kind of in the same
neighborhood.
In the same neighborhood, so to speak, and we'll work through them. All right, George is asking, what are the plans as far as defensive backs with all of our injuries? So a couple of key things. Xavier Rhodes and Andrew Sendejo, both in the concussion protocol. We will hear from Frank Reich tomorrow afternoon on the likelihood for either of those 2 guys or both guys to be available for Sunday. Not yet sure, because they do have those steps of the concussion protocol to get to. So that's something to keep in mind. Travis, are we getting any veteran cornerbacks we lost because of short on our roster? Those secondary cannot make big plays. Chase, what happened to our defense? Why did they go to soft coverage up 16 points every time we play zone? It really hurts us. So combination of, the personnel that you had late in that game, and then also just adjustments that you need to make moving forward.
Well, it was sort of a combination of everything. It was a perfect storm going against the Colts. It's one of those things where it's not necessarily the last touchdown that really kills you. It's the first one. It's sort of the first poke in the dam.
Pick either Mark Andrews touchdown.
Yeah, or you're looking at Marquise Brown, who had over 100 yards too, right? So, a tight end and a wide receiver. By the way, Andrews' performance was just exceptional. He is the first tight end ever to have 10 catches and at least 140 yards receiving against the Colts franchise. So simply amazing performance. So you have to kind of tip your cap to all 3 of those guys, including Lamar Jackson, who went from a 60% completion percentage quarterback this season to an 86% completion percentage quarterback in 1 game. So he had a lot to do with it. The injuries on the defensive side of the ball had a lot to do with it. They were going quick. They were going breakneck speed. I mean, they were snapping the ball still with 25 seconds on the play clock. They were going as fast as they possibly could, keeping the Colts off guard. It was hard for the Colts to substitute. You saw that on the defensive line. You know, I think it was Tyquan Lewis, DeForest Buckner, and Grover Stewart. All of those guys played over 80% of the snaps. That's not necessarily a good thing because you want to be fresh on the defensive line, and when they're going as fast as they were, it's hard to get guys in and out of the game. So the pass rush was kind of negated. The injuries in the secondary played a part of it. You know, you had guys like Bo Pete Keys in the ball game late. You had Anthony Chesley into the ball game late. Nothing against those guys, right? They're NFL players for a reason, but they are third and fourth on your depth chart because of injury. So it was just, like I said, it's one of those things. It's a very, very forgettable night. Defensively, you just kind of have to make sure it doesn't happen again. And, you know, Frank Reich and Matt Eberflus talked this week about how do we make changes? You know, what can we do different? Again, when you lose a game like that on a national stage and you're up by 19 points, everything's going to get looked at. Everything's going to get scrutinized. And obviously on the defensive side of the ball, that's no exception. But for the season here, the cold hard truth is the Colts are giving up a 125 passer rating against, okay? And they're also giving up a 73% completion percentage. So, you know, Lamar Jackson had a great night, but defensively, I think some of that aided his outstanding performance on Monday Night Football. So I'll be really interested to see what kind of tweaks, what kind of changes the Colts have going forward, especially in the secondary.
A couple things to follow up on. Notably, also within those first 3 games of the season, you had Russell Wilson, you had Matthew Stafford, and you had Ryan Tannehill. So you did have some elite level quarterbacks that you were going up against.
Yeah, exactly. You can't take anything away from those guys, great players. But unfortunately, last year, same kind of thing. We saw once the schedule beefed up towards the end of last year when you started playing more elite quarterbacks towards the end of the season, since from week 11 until the end of last year, the Colts gave up 296 yards passing per game, which was 31st. So it's something that I think is more than just obviously a one-game isolated incident. And I think that's what the question askers on Facebook are getting at is how can we change this trend that unfortunately has popped up more than once.
And Travis was asking about signing any veteran cornerbacks. We haven't heard of any personnel changes in that regard, but one thing we can note was that Rock Ya-Sin was practicing in a limited capacity, so it seems that he's progressing closer toward a possible return. Want to work through a few of these and then certainly have a question on Carson Wentz that we want to get to as well. Jeremy wants to know any news on a Mack trade. I think if you saw the production that you got from Marlon Mack, I don't know that you want to trade that guy anymore. It seems like that has all been completely squashed because of the way that you spread this offense around. And you were really started. One of the most promising things that I saw in that Baltimore game is I feel like it was very clear the confidence that Marlon is gaining on his explosiveness. Something that Eric Fisher talked about a couple weeks ago because he, of course, had an Achilles injury as well. A little bit different when we're talking about an offensive lineman versus a running back coming back from those type of injuries. But still, Fisher noted that for athletes coming off of an Achilles tear, it's that last 10% of the explosiveness to come back. Like, although you can feel 100% physically, 100% in your strength and your conditioning, there's still that little bit. And I think we are starting to see, especially in Monday night, that was starting to come back from Marlon Mack.
Yeah, you saw him put that foot in the ground and go. And not that he didn't do it in training camp and the preseason, but this was the first time really definitively in the regular season you saw him be decisive, put that foot in the ground, and get up the field. He had a couple of nice runs the other night of over 10 yards. And I think the Colts really are in a really difficult spot when it comes to Marlon because they want to do right by him. Fantastic player, over 1,000 yards a couple of years ago in 2019. But you just feel so bad for him. You wonder what could have been had he not suffered that Achilles injury in week 1 last year because he was really primed for a breakout year. And then obviously that opened the door for Jonathan Taylor. And you don't want to take anything away from JT. He is a superstar, okay? Jonathan Taylor is just, what can that guy not do? Perfect blend of speed, power. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can block. JT, again, top 5 running back in the NFL. I still don't want to take any carries away from him, but at the same time, it's almost a shame. It's criminal that Marlon Mack is the number 2 guy because he would be the starting running back for a lot of NFL teams right now here in 2021. He is a great insurance policy if, where's here? I'll just use my head. Knock on wood, Jonathan Taylor.
Here, right here.
Yeah, there's something down here made out of wood.
This whole desk is wood, actually. There we go. Plenty
We're doing some knocking here. But knock on wood, Jonathan Taylor stays healthy. But if something were to happen, man, what a great insurance policy Marlon Mack would be. So therefore, it kind of muddies that decision even more to trade Marlon Mack. So it's definitely something that you're going to be watching out for the rest of this season, because I think Marlon Mack's a great back, and trading a running back of his caliber, that's a tough one.
Absolutely. And of course, a lot of questions in regards to the offensive line. Robert asking, has anyone heard what is going on with Braden Smith? An update on Braden Smith, and we heard this from Frank Reich on Tuesday, is that he would do some things on the side, or actually this may have been even last week that Frank was talking about this. Again, they're all blending together at this point. We're coming off of a Monday.
Somebody get Larra a calendar.
Okay? A calendar and a coffee, okay? But Frank was talking about that Braden would not be practicing in a team setting, but you would start to see him out there working around on the perimeter with some of the trainers. And that's much like what we saw when Eric Fisher in training camp was working his way back.
Yeah.
He wasn't involved in any of the team portion of practices, but he was out there working through some drills, working through some progress. No official, though, designation on Braden Smith and exactly where he is. We do have the practice report, which will be coming out here very soon. And then you will hear from Frank Reich tomorrow at 1:45 when he will list that who's in, who's out from the Friday practice assessment and what the availability will be for some of those guys. All right, the play that no one has stopped talking about. Denver wants to know what's up with the call when fumbled and we tossed the ball backwards and it was called a forward pass. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I think we all said, are you serious? And Darius was asked about that play. Guys, he's not over it yet. Like, he is still hurting over that play because it was a brilliant play by Julian Blackmon to get the ball out. And then the reaction from Darius was just incredible. And then when Darius was getting caught, because, of course, Darius is a quick guy, but he has that bum ankle.
Yeah.
And he has the awareness to find Isaiah Rodgers, who has, like, unmatched, 4.2 40 speed, like, breakaway. Like, he was like Usain Bolt flying down that sideline.
It's like you in 2006.
Right, yes, exactly. Just finishing that 1,500 meter exactly like that. Tell me what you saw on the play. We watched it.
I saw a lateral. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, the fact, listen, I'm all for replay. I really am. But sometimes I think we get in our own way with this. There's no way. If you ask 100 people in a bar, hey, is this a lateral? I think 100 out of 100 say it's a backwards lateral. So just ridiculous. Unfortunately, it negated one of the more exciting defensive plays in the history of the franchise. And what a great heady play by Darius Leonard, going down awkwardly and then seeing a teammate, by the way, the fastest guy on the team, give him the ball, run down the sideline. It actually, though, to be honest with you, although it did negate a very exciting play, it actually worked out better for the Colts because they did score a touchdown on that offensive possession. Therefore, were able to, work more time off the clock. They got in the end zone. They actually, they got their touchdown after all, going up 22-3. And I think I'm making everybody feel worse about it because, a 19-point lead right there and still not able to win it.
And we know how much this defense thrives on takeaways and being able to score on defense and what that does on that sideline. I mean, the injection that would have infused to that defense at that point in time. But, we're fine. This is like a therapy session right here. You can just talk it all out.
There's a couch behind this.
Talk it all out. And clear. You know what we can feel good about, though? Carson Wentz. Just the fourth quarterback in franchise history to pass for over 400 yards in a single game, joining quite elite company, Johnny Unitas, Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning. Pretty spectacular. And Martinez wants to ask, when are we going to let Wentz loose? I don't know if you can find a guy who was more loose than Wentz was on Monday night. He looked pretty loose to me.
I mean, I think he's already there, to be honest with you, because the other night he had 7 completions over 20 yards and 9 different guys caught a pass.
9?
Yeah.
9.
So I mean, I don't know what more you want. I mean, offensively, you put up 513 yards and you put up 25 points. That should be enough to win you a football game. But again, I go back to what I've said repeatedly. Anytime you give up a 19-point lead, everything's going to get looked at. And the biggest thing right now holding this offense back, if you're looking for common denominators on why you're 1-4, it's red zone. the Colts have to get better in red zone. I mean, they're 7 for 19 this year. That's last. That's dead last in the NFL. And, the other night, the Colts had 3 drives of 9 or more plays that resulted in no points. That's just backbreaker in the sense that you move the ball, you control the clock, you're winning the box score, but you're not dominating the football game. And for a good stretch of that first half, the Colts led by only a touchdown, and you just felt like it should have been, 17-0 or 21-0. And, they were 1 for 4 in the red zone the other night, and they failed to score on 2 of those trips altogether. No points inside the 20-yard line, and that was a big difference in the win versus the loss. And so it's just something that's got to get cleaned up. I think obviously Frank Reich has talked about it every single week. It's a hallmark in the NFL. It's a hallmark for Frank Reich. I know it keeps him up at night. And it's not for a lack of creativity. It's not for a lack of game planning. It just comes down to execution, guys making plays inside the 20 so that you get 7s and, not settle for 3s or have field goals blocked. And then defensively, the Colts are just giving up too many red zone touchdowns. That's what it boils down to.
Okay, Chase threw out an interesting one. When Nelson comes back, what do you do with Reed? Reed is going great at left guard. I think he can be our future right guard. I think one thing is, you need depth on the offensive line. So that's the guy who you've got to have.
Well,
you talk about insurance policies.
Well, both guards,
yeah.
Really, both guards. Mark Lewinsky's having a hell of a season.
Right.
He hadn't allowed a sack all year. So I know you're looking at long-term answers. There's no reason why Mark Lewinsky shouldn't be the long-term answer at right guard. Continue to be, I should say, because he's been here since 2018. But Chris Reed has been here's how you know Chris Reed's playing very, very well. I haven't said Chris Reed's name in 3 weeks. Right? It's like a corner. Like if I don't talk about the corner giving up a big play, that means you're playing well. Just like an offensive lineman. If you're not giving up sacks, usually we're not talking about you. That's a good thing from a play-by-play guy standpoint.
Hey.
He has been very, very solid.
Chris Reed, multiple-time All-American in track and field in the throws.
The shot put, right?
Shot and hammer, I think, maybe. Yeah. So.
I have never seen anybody execute a hammer throw.
Oh, well, that's for another show. We can go through all of that. Trust me, I got plenty of film we can break down. But I don't think anyone wants to hear about that here. So we've talked long enough. I think we still have to figure out our calendars and all of these things. You got a lot of work to do because you're still catching up.
You do need a calendar.
There's one on here. I can't figure out how to use it. If somebody wants to navigate my Microsoft Surface and figure out how I can schedule my Zoom calls on here, that would be really helpful. So.
A day in the life.
I'll get it all straightened out by Sunday at 1 o'clock. How does that sound? I know where I'm going to be then.
I'll call you.
I know where I'll be then. Where are you going to be? Hey, you're going to have the TV on or you're going to have the radio on. Join us, myself, Matt Taylor, Rick Venturi, Bell Tire Radio Network. Cannot wait to have everyone back at Lucas Oil Stadium. It is Crucial Catch Game. There is Touchdown Town happening. So much going on downtown Indianapolis. We look forward to either you're joining us there at the stadium or joining us for all of our coverage that we have, of course, on TV. It'll be CBS carrying the network. Radio, it will be us.
Yep.
And, of course, following along on Colts.com and all of our digital platforms. Have a great Thursday. Hey, figured out what day it was by the end of the show.